All right, guys, today we're gonna take a look at what might be the most advanced AIO you could possibly get on the market today. This is the Ryogen True 360, not the one. We already looked at that one a few years ago. All right, so this is built with the same collaborative effort with Noctua. I mean, just flopped right open there, don't you know? Really, the only thing that makes it Noctua is the fans. Past that, everything else is either Asetek or Asus and ROG designs. So the fans that it comes with here, we'll start with those because that's what makes it Noctua, are the all black Noctua fans, which is funny because they didn't use the black ones on the 3070 Noctua Edition graphics card, which I think they should have, but I digress. Now we have 3 more Noctua fans that we can use. They're the exact same ones that came with the Ryogen 1, the first one. But, so that means right off the bat, there's no RGB whatsoever on the fans, which might make people happy. I think that's kind of sad because the fact that RGB is you can make it any color you want, even solid colors. It also makes this other bit that you get in here a little bit interesting. This is the ROG hub, is what I'm just gonna call it, and didn't see an actual name for it. Might be the cleanest and nicest looking RGB fan slash hub you're ever gonna see on the market. And this is one of the things I love so much about ROG's aesthetics and design. It's metal, and it gives you a spot for 6 fans. Wait, well, 4 fans, sorry. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you've got 4 ARGB standard 3-pin headers. So no longer do you have a cord hanging off this with a SATA of power on the end. It plugs directly into it, which helps keep things cleaner. And then you've got your ARGB in. So all you need to go to this is a adapter cable, which I'm sure comes with this kit, that will just connect to the motherboard's single ARGB header. This will split the signal into 4. So now you've got 3 additional. So essentially I would say 4 additional, but you're using 1 from the motherboard there. So you give up 1, you gain 3 more, essentially. So even though you do not have RGB fans, you now can expand any motherboard that has a standard ARGB 3-pin header. Technically it's 4-pin, remember there's a gap, so it's 3. And now you have expansion. So that's a huge bonus. They've built upon their previous Ryogen, where a portion of the pump top was actually an OLED screen. Now the entire thing is a screen. So this entire thing lights up, and you can control this using the software to have it play GIFs or show telemetry information, whether it be, I see telemetry, I guess we'll just call it a sensor panel. So I can show you temperatures, voltages, all sorts of stuff. The actual cold plate itself is still Asetek, which means it still uses the standard Asetek bracketry. So if you actually have a cooler in there now that uses this bracket, you could just not have to remove the retention system and swap it over pretty easily. But another really cool function of this is the fact that the pump top here, everything on top of the pump, the brand can customize and do whatever they want with. The bottom is part of Asetek patent. That's no different than any other cooler that's ever used Asetek, but they're allowed to use whatever they want on top of it. So that's how you've got the screen and everything on there. But one of the downsides of going with an AIO water cooler, or even custom water cooling for that matter, the capacitors and the VRAM and the components around the CPU need cooling as well. But this has a fan built into it, which is pulling air in through the vents around the side here, as you can see, and is pushing air down and firing it out these vents around the bottom, splashing air in 360 pattern around the cooler, helping cool components around it. Memory, VRMs, chipsets, not chipset, but capacitors, everything around the CPU which gets hot is now getting some sort of active cooling. And you can see here their contact pins. So right underneath, you can see there's the entire circuitry and everything for the screen. And these are magnetic. So they just pop on there magnetically. And what I really like about this too is the length. Check out the length of this. My biggest complaint is always the lengths are too short, which makes it hard to cable manage. Look at the lengths on this guy. That's really long. Now the radiator is still an aluminum radiator, and it's got the ROG logo in there as well. And this is obviously a 360 variant. Let's see what else comes in the box right here. This box is actually somewhat hard to get out of here. Okay, so here's the other stuff you got. Oh, Intel 1700, okay. Interesting, because I believe that one was also 1700, but there it is. Intel 1700 bracket and the back tension plate. Stickers, manual, and then in here, you have your AMD bracket. This AMD bracket is so much better than the ones other brands use. Other brands will use the ones that still have the clips that just clip on the two plastic tabs, and then when you tighten them down, they kind of bow out and they look stupid. Thank you, Asus and Asetek, for using the proper AMD bracket, which gives you 4 points of contact to get really good tension on your CPU, giving you the best cooling possible. 3M tape for mounting the controller somewhere, which is actually very weighty. So I'm glad they used the red tape, or the red sticker tape, because this is heavy actually. This right here is our ARGB extension wire, which is gonna connect to the controller. Another back retention plate for standard Intel. So that one was 1700. This is all the other Intel sockets. And a fan splitter for a 3-way fan headers, because you have 3 fans here, so you need to be able to plug in 3 fans. There's that, so you could technically use 1 header off of this and have 3 fans. Retention screws and stuff, which is just the standard Asetek style, which look like every other one on the market, and all your mounting screws. So you know what we gotta do now. We gotta get this mounted up on our Intel 10900K. I'd love to test it on a 1200, but I don't have a 1200 test bench right now, a 12900K, to be able to test the temps. But my 10900K does have an overclock applied to it, so we'll see how well the cooler cools on that. But more importantly, I wanna see how nice this screen looks. So let's go ahead and get it mounted up. In terms of mounting, no different than any other AIO that uses the Asetek bracketry. So it's gonna be pretty simple. Okay, so the Ryogen uses the Asus Armory Crate, which, you know, it's funny. Armory Crate, when it first came out, was something I was like, oh, another piece of software. But at least Asus and ROG have used one piece of software now for everything. So it's installed, it's updated, and immediately noticed our Ryogen was installed, and it now shows in our peripherals tab. So in the display initially here, this is the default animation that shows. It was this way when we first started. And because of the orientation of our cooler right now, that made everything sideways. But you can just switch from landscape to portrait mode, and it readjusts the screen to be facing the right way. So these are the 3 animations that come with default. There's this kind of a looping, says Republic of Gamers, and then it like crosses out into a logo. This one here just sort of traces the logo, which is kind of neat and subtle. Then you got this synth wavy kind of looking one. And then you can add more, right? You can have it go, between all 3 if you wanted. So if we hit apply right now, it'll actually just go through all 3. Now you can customize this sort of stuff, which is neat. 24-hour clock, 12-hour clock, upload custom animation files. It tells you what it supports and the maximum frames, etc. So there you go. So the hardware monitor, you can see here, you can set between quad, single, dual, quad, or triple and quad. That's just the amount of info shown on the screen. Right now everything's zeroed because we don't have the supporting software installed for it, which I believe is AIDA64, because that's a part of the download section for the Ryogen. I didn't download it, therefore. It actually uses AIDA64 to get the information just like the center panel video that Phil did, showing you how to create your own. So this is just putting it on the screen for you already. But obviously, either they saw our video, or that's just the way everyone's doing it, I don't know. And then custom banner, this is just an image, and you can create your own image if you want. But right now, none of this matters, because what we care about right now is obviously going to be temperatures and stuff. Now, fan control, if you have an Asus motherboard and you have a crate or Armory Crate, then the controls are gonna look exactly the same. It's just now you see the embedded micro fan. So that's the little fan that's on top of the CPU pump that I showed you, creates a downfire, and we can control that independently. So if I wanted to just like max the crap out of that, that little fan's actually pretty loud if you let it go full speed, but I wanted some cool components around the CPU. Pump speed is just set to full speed by default, and then AIO fan controller, that's the hub I showed you. That's what our fans are connected to, and we can move this in a linear line. You can't create a curve, which is odd. So with that set, and we'll go back to default, because now I want to load up Cinebench, and I'm curious now as to what our temperatures are going to look like. And I'm also going to compare the temperatures that Ryogen is showing versus what like hardware monitor is showing. Because one of the problems with the initial Ryogen 1 was whatever they were pulling their temperatures from was not matching what other software was saying. 67. Okay. Ryogen is also showing 67. So it's showing package temp, obviously. Fans are kicking up like they're supposed to, so that's good. Look at that, 60s on all the cores. Not a single core left the 60s. Now, obviously this would have to run for a while, but the nice thing about this is it's really gonna perform just as good as any other 360 AIO Asetek design, because it's the same cold plate, it's the same pump, it's the same radiators. And as you can see, the temperatures are obviously gonna be far from TJ Maxx. We are running at 1.32 volts on all the cores right here. So as soon as the CPU hit 70C on the package right there, the fans did speed up a notch. And the fans right now, if we look at the fan speed, they're only running at 70%. So that's why once we hit 70, they went to 100 right here. Because at 70, that curve is set to 100. And we can move that as we go if we wanted to kind of keep the sound a little bit less jumpy and jarry. Yeah, in terms of temperatures though, it's doing fantastic. Get it? Fantastic job, We're on like our 10th loop now of Cinebench R20, and the temperatures have just not moved. You can see 71's the hottest package temp. We have one core that hits 72, another core that hits 72, 70, 71, 70. These temps are absolutely amazing. I mean, look at the current temps right here. And someone could say, well, Jay, the fans are probably speeding up. If you look at the dot right here and where we are, we're exactly where we were the entire time. It sits at right about 70. It just restarted the test, there we go. So it sits at 69 to 70 C, or 70, C on the package temp, which means our fan curve is still staying right here in this region. So this cooler is actually really, really effective. It's not cheap though. This is not one of those coolers that is like for the faint of heart. This is probably getting into the territory of, if it were me, I'd put different fans on there because I like the lighting. So I would put some sort of a decent high static pressure fan, maybe even something like the Be Quiet Light Wings, to be honest, because they've got those nice, tasteful lights on there now. They're quiet. They're amazing with static pressure and airflow. They'll work with that hub that comes with the cooler for the RGB hub. And the fact that they're standard 4-pin PWM, which means you can still use that hub. They'll work with all of the ROG software like this. The screen being customizable. The display is pretty sharp for what it is. It's also pretty bright. It's tasteful, it looks nice. It's different than the typical round crap you see everywhere right now, which means that this is probably the biggest stopgap between a basic AIO and going full custom water loop in terms of temperatures, capabilities, and it supports all of the socket sets that you would care about. Intel 2011, I don't think it supports Threadripper, unfortunately, but the size is just not big enough for Threadripper. All of your Intel sockets up to the brand new LGA 1700 found on 12th gen. So there you go. The first Ryujin with us was a disappointment. Some of our cables were broken out of the box. The way the plugs were, it wasn't good. We were not a fan of the initial Ryujin. We used it once and then basically put it up on the shelf and haven't touched it again. This one, however, looks like they took all that feedback, not just from us, but from the general consumer about concerns with the initial Ryujin and made what appears to be a pretty solid product. I'll be leaving this on our test bench now for moving forward, because that's gonna help with long-term testing and such. But so far, it is appearing to be among the best AIOs that you can get for customization and performance. If you're using it, sound off down below how your experiences have been. Put a link down in the description as well that you guys can check out to go and see current pricing and features of this. This was not a sponsored video. It happened to come with our Intel 12th gen testing kit, and then we decided to do a separate video about this because I'm curious, how's the second one compared to the first one? Was it a worthy sequel, or was it just the same thing rebranded? Not the same thing, that's for sure. Look at that, we just passed our 10-minute test right there, and there was our temps right there. So in terms of heat soak, I think at max 5C is what you could expect, because we went from like 68 to 72, more than 30 degrees before we would hit TJ Maxx or throttling with our overclock and our slightly upped voltage. All right guys, thanks for watching as always. We'll see you tomorrow.